Hello, everyone. I'm Mabel Chan. Welcome back to my podcast, One in a Billion. We took August off. Hope you had a great summer. Today, we kick off the fall season, Find Your Roots, special series with a spotlight on Asians in New York City. Find Your Roots is about Asian American mothers and daughters, fathers and sons, looking back at the roots of their family history, cultural identity, and personal journey, one person at a time.
My name is Loida Lewis, that's English. Mi nombre es Loida Lewis, that's Spanish. Je m'appelle Loida Lewis en français. In Italian, je parlo Italiano Loida Lewis. Bicolano, ang ngaran ko Loida Lewis. That's a dialect in the Sorsogon, Bicol region where I grew up.
Loida Lewis is one of the most fascinating, multifaceted, multilingual Asian American women I've come to know. Born in the Philippines, Loida is a lawyer by training who had also wanted to be a nun until one day she met Reginald Lewis, an African-American corporate lawyer in New York City. After lots of twists and turns in their dating drama,
I was the one who proposed marriage to Mr. Lewis.
In today's episode, you'll hear more about Reginald Lewis, the love of her life, and their interracial marriage in the late 1960s. In her new memoir, Why Should Guys Have All the Fun?, published by Wiley earlier this year, Loida openly talks about her vulnerabilities, her culture, and her faith when she had to face the biggest loss in her life. Here's our conversation. I've read your memoir, Why Should Guys Have All the Fun? An Asian American story of love, marriage, motherhood, and running a billion-dollar empire. I am most touched by your prologue. You quoted the Bible, Romans 8:28. All things work together unto good to those who love God, to those who are called according to his purpose. What was on your mind when you chose that verse and followed it with your prayer for your late husband, Reginald Lewis?
I started it with the prologue when I brought in a faith healer from the Philippines because my husband had brain cancer and he didn't want chemotherapy, he didn't want radiation because when he asked his doctors, all of them said it will not cure you, it will just strengthen your life. But in his mind, it will fry my brain. So he didn't want that. Why not? Let's try everything. And sadly, it didn't work.
You were hanging on to your belief in the miracle, and you were childlike in your earnesty, sincerity in praying for that miracle.
Yes, because part of the Bible also said, ask and you will receive, seek and you will find, knock and the door will be open to you. So I believe that I am knocking, I am praying, I am seeking God's mercy to cure my husband.
How did you see God's mercy through it all during this period of struggle, battle against cancer?
When they took a biopsy of his brain on December 31, and then it was confirmed it was cancer. And he died in 3 weeks, January 19. So I didn't have enough time to really process that he was going to die. I was totally catatonic, depressed, out of sorts, unbelieving. But because I do believe that God is a loving God, I never said, why me? But I could not say the Our Father. I could not say, thy will be done. And I just took strength from Isaiah, the prophet Isaiah. A mother may forget a baby on her breast, but even if she does forget, I will not forget you. So, again followed by, I will not leave you orphaned. I have carved you in the palm of my hands. So for me, I took strength that God, I am in God's hands. He will not abandon me. He will not forget me. And so, slowly, little by little, I gained strength from that belief. And by 6 months, I was able to, it's almost like I extended my hand and God lifted me up. And I've been walking ever since.
Wow. during those 6 months. Would you call that it was a depression?
Clinically, it was a depression. Because I could not even answer the telephone from any of my friends. I was constantly crying. I knew that God is there with me because as I was crying on my bed, our dog, Gilbert, a Labrador, just put his paws on me as if to say, don't cry now, it's okay. So, that those are some of the things that strengthened me, that I know that God is there, even sending a dog to console me.
You also have 2 daughters. How old were they then?
Leslie was 19 and Christina was 12, very young. But in my sorrow, I really was not able to deal with them. Christina tells me now, nobody even told me that Dad was sick and was going to die. I was not myself during those times.
It must have been hard to be living with both your daughters while you were struggling with that period.
Well, it was hard to have that happen to anybody. And we're just married 24 and a half years. But I am so blessed that Mr. Lewis' mother, I call her mother-in-law, Caroline Fugit, came to me and stayed with me until I was able to get myself together. My sister also came, my husband's aunt, Beverly Cooper, they all came. When you are in grief, it is good to be surrounded by family who love you. They were all there. So that was a difficult time, but the most important is that I knew God will not abandon me.
That's beautiful. Loida, can you trace the roots of your faith? Was there a religious or spiritual background in your childhood?
We grew up right in front of the cathedral, the Catholic Church. And growing up, our priest, Father Florencio Iliana, was one of the best friends of my father. That alone was already a connection. In Sorsogon, when I was growing up, at 6 o'clock, the church bell will ring and everybody in town stops and say the Angelus, the angel of the Lord declared into Mary. Everybody stops. So it's sort of like our faith is part of our daily life. Then I studied in high school, St. Agnes Academy, which is conducted by German nuns. German nuns, no kidding. I mean, they were strict, but they also infused in me a sense of palpable faith. They left Germany to come to Sorsogon, a province of nowhere, to teach us about God, about Jesus, about how to act. So that impressed me a lot, that these nuns would give up a comfortable life in Germany and come to the Philippines. I was also in all-girls school, St. Teresa's College in San Marcelino, Manila. They were Belgian nuns, all of them leaving their country. So for me, that was a noble kind of life. And in fact, I went to law school. Second year, I was going to enter the convent.
You had wanted to be a nun. How old were you when you felt that calling? Was it a calling?
Yes, it is a calling in the sense that I admired the Benedictine nuns, the German nuns. And just to think I would live a life devoted to public service, I thought that was very noble. It's a wonderful way to spend one's life. But I listened to my mother, which said, Loida, your second year, you have 2 more years to go. Why don't you finish it? Become a lawyer. So when you enter, you're a lawyer. If you leave the convent, you're still a lawyer. The merchandise is in your head. And I thought that made so much sense.
So you did not become a nun. You married Reginald Lewis, an African-American lawyer in New York City. Was it love at first sight?
No, I don't fall in love that easily. When we first met on a blind date, all I knew was that whatever I said, he had something to say. And when he said something, I have something to say. But I was impressed because we were in this soul food restaurant, West Boondocks, and they had like lechon, ham hocks, which is African-American food, soul food. And that's what I ordered. They all ordered fried chicken. But what impressed me was that here we are, 25 years old, and he orders a bottle of champagne.
Wow. You were 25 or 26?
I was 25 years old, bright and full of hope.
Yes. So you were 25. Had you dated before him?
No, because in the Philippines, our dating is always with a group. Yes. So I've never dated one-on-one.
Here's the thing, Loida. You were 25 and you got married to Mr. Reginald Lewis.
We met at 25. We fell in love in December, all right? And we got married in August. 7 months.
Oh, wow.
7 months. Why is that? It's chapter 2 in the book. Our first meeting, he was so fresh. So I wrote him a letter. I don't want to see you again because intimacy should be for people who are going to get married. I'm not going to have anything to do with you.
You didn't think you were going to get serious.
No. I wrote him, don't ever call me again. 1 week later, he calls me. Oh my God, he didn't get my letter. Because I had fun the first time, I went out with him again the second time. And we had a nice time. And when he was bringing me back to the hotel, I asked him, I wrote you a letter. Yes, you did. What? You received my letter? I told you don't call me again. And this is what he said. Loida, I'll never do anything you don't want me to do. He was right.
He was right. He gets your heart.
Yes. So I continued going with him. And that's when I started to fall in love. Because he is almost the same as my father. Hardworking, ambitious, driven, and he will wear the pants in the family. Meaning, I was in UP College of Law. I had the best of the best among all the men. But because I'm such a strong character, I know I can handpick them all. But when I met Mr. Lewis, I've met my match. He was better than me in all respects, so I surrender.
You were born and raised in Sorsogon. Tell me a little bit about that town. What is that like? What do you remember?
It's a really small town, probably at most 5,000, where everybody knew everybody. And my father was sort of smart or had a second sense that we should not go in a private school. We should go to the public school so that we have the common touch. My father himself was, poor in the sense that his father died when he was 12. His mother had 3 boys. He's the oldest and he's the most active. When we were growing up, my father never distinguished people by the color of their skin, by their physical appearance, by their economic activity. So growing up, I had sort of like an egalitarian values, meaning everyone equal.
Wow, that's very grounded. Now, you grew up in the Philippines and finished law school at the University of Philippines before coming to America. How would you describe some specific personality traits that you have inherited from your mom or your dad or your grandparents?
Well, first of all, working hard, achieve your goal. I was a valedictorian in high school, cum laude in St. Teresa's, and in UP, you are fighting the best of the best. I was part of the Honor Society, Phi Beta Kappa. I was a member of the Law Review, which means you have to have a certain grade, but I didn't get number 1 or number 2. I was just number 7 in our graduating class. So what kind of training was that? The training that I got from my father and my mother means you work hard, you try your best, you compete, but don't forget to have fun.
How would you describe specific core values and beliefs that they have passed on to you besides working hard?
Aside from working hard is setting goals, doing your best. Because I'm the first girl and my 2 eldest brothers were his heirs, for me, he was very, very liberal. So what kind of values is that? That I can do no wrong. I can do whatever I decided to do. So while I was in UP College of Law, I ran for public office, sort of like senator. And that's the time when President Johnson came. And we had a rally in front of Congress because they were going to vote whether we send a civilian group to Vietnam. And a friend of mine reminded me, Loida, I saw you, this thin woman, going to this policeman who was brandishing his gun. And he said, you touched his arm, and somehow whatever you told him, he put it down.
Wow. You had pull.
Fearless. And it's not so much power. For me, it didn't make sense. We are not armed. We were peacefully protesting. Why would he brandish his gun? So he just put his hand and said, Sir, We are here in the peacefully. There's no need for this gun. Somehow he put it down.
How old were you then?
18, 19.
Wow, fearless. So that's fantastic. You talked a lot about the values you have inherited from your parents, working hard, goal setting. How about anything that you consider Asian specific values, customs and practices that may not be appreciated or even resented here in America or in New York?
Well, there are 4 million Filipino Americans or Filipinos in the census. And for me, because we lived in Paris, we go around the world when Mr. Lewis bought Beatrice International. And I meet people and say, oh, you're Filipina? You know, my mother was sick and there was this Filipino nurse who was so kind. Or my wife gave birth and this doctor was so good, helped my wife, recover. Things like that. So what is the Asian trait or Filipino trait? It's our sense of compassion. We can be with everybody. Black, white, Asian, Muslim, Jewish. Filipinos are known to be an equalizer. And so I think I have kept that.
So no conflicts in terms of your approach to life or competition in the workplace. How would you talk about what is specifically Asian that you bring to bear that might get you in trouble or might have gotten you in trouble?
For me, I had to fight discrimination in the workplace. And when I passed the bar of New York, and there was 11 positions available at Immigration and Naturalization Service, federal government, I applied. And after 1 year, I got a letter that I was not chosen one of the 11. And in my mind, what? I'm good. I speak 3 languages at that time. Filipino, of course, English, Spanish. I'm top of my class. So how do I find out whether I have been discriminated?
No reason given?
No reason, just that I wasn't accepted. So I had to sue them for discrimination.
And did you succeed?
After 3 years, the judge finally gave me a hearing. And I told them, look at my qualifications, this and that, and this and that, and this and that. And the judge said, all right, INS lawyer, produce the biodata of all 11. They did not produce it. So in law, when you are asked to produce a document and you don't produce it, it is assumed it's against you. So the judge said, she's this and she's that. Therefore, she has been discriminated against because of gender, being a woman, national origin, being from the Philippines, and race, because I'm brown. And I won 3 years back pay.
Wow.
2 months vacation leave and 1 month personal leave.
Did you expect that?
I sort of expected it because I knew I'm good. And I worked with immigration for 10 years.
I want to switch gear now to the Philippines, your homeland, and the roots of your culture. What is the attitude in the Philippines about interracial marriage? Are they open or biased? Does it matter the color of one's skin in any way?
The Philippines was a colony of Spain for 350 years. And therefore, that is part and parcel of the DNA of the Filipino. And what is that? Color. White is better than black. White is better than brown. Being Spanish, having a Spanish blood, you are a step up better than others.
That was a prevailing attitude.
Well, that's colonialism. We have the colonial mentality. After 350 years, we were a colony of the United States. And the United States, there was slavery, which I say is the original sin of the United States. So the racism of America transferred to the Filipinos. So what is the attitude of Filipinos over Black Americans? The same attitude as the majority of the white population. So what did my parents say? I don't know what they say, but when my father saw the picture of Mr. Lewis and looked into my eyes, he saw that his daughter is in love. And so no objection.
Wow. And your mother?
My mother met Mr. Lewis. No objection whatsoever.
What year did you leave your family in the Philippines and move to New York City to marry Mr. Lewis? And what was the attitude then towards a Filipino woman like yourself who probably appeared exotic to some in New York City? We're talking about
1969. We got married August 16, 1969 in the Philippines. And immediately from the reception, We rode on Philippine Airlines to Hawaii. Then we came to Hawaii, and that's my first problem with immigration because, of course, he's American. He's on the American line. I'm on the tourist or non-American line. And so when I reached the immigration officer, he asked naturally the usual question, how long will you stay in the United States? I said, permanently. I just got married. Oops! Wrong answer. I have a tourist visa and I'm going to stay permanently. That means I lied in front of the American consulate. And so I had to stay behind. I had to be questioned. Mr. Lewis was so worried. And that's where I decided, I'm a Filipino, I'm a lawyer, I'm intelligent, and yet I got caught. So then and there, I decided, if ever I'm going to practice law in the United States, it will be immigration law.
That's interesting. In the time that you were married to an African-American man in New York City, as a Filipino-American woman in New York, was there anything difficult for you?
Really, if I look for discrimination, I'll find it. So I don't look. I look for beauty, I look for compassion, because you will find it. You look for compassion, you look for goodness, you will find it.
As a foreign-born Asian woman in New York, do you see any advantages or disadvantages in how you approach your boss, your coworkers? Did you ever think about that question? And I ask because as a foreign-born Asian woman myself, who became a naturalized U.S. citizen in 2000, I spent many years hiding my roots in Hong Kong while working in TV news media in New York. And I have seen differences in how I approach opportunities and injustice. I fight back. I actually see a more cautious and conservative approach from Asian Americans who are born here with their families. You know, they try to keep their heads down and be the worker bees that get the job done and never rock the boat. You see, so my question is a little bit more nuanced.
Well, as I said, I thought that I should have been one of the 11 attorneys hired by INS, so I sued them for discrimination. But I have to sort of caution if you are working with a corporation, because a corporation can be very vindictive. And if you sue them for discrimination, you might not be given a referral. But U.S. government is still a government of laws and not of men. They judge discrimination against me. I am a lawyer. It's different from you're out in the television, on radio, and appearances and accents are important. In law, as the U.S. Supreme Court said, citizenship should not be equality. So it's a different kind of identity and
Context.
contacts and skill. So if you are a scientist and you're very good, whether you're Chinese or you're not, or you're Asian, or if you're good as a scientist, you'll get hired. That's why I always emphasize, do your work well, appear on time, be reliable, and you're going to go up. Now the question is, will you go to the very top? Now that is still a big question, because in the United States, with how many public companies, there's only 4% who are headed by women.
How did you negotiate the racial ethnic identity for yourself and your two daughters? Asian American, Asian Black American, Black American?
Between my husband and I, we agreed that they will grow up African Americans. They will grow up as Black children. Why? Because America will not recognize their being Asian. They know that their mother is Filipina. They know that they love chicken adobo. They love, the things that we eat. But they are Black Americans. And in fact, I am very proud of them, because for Leslie, she is now teaching multi-generational African-American community on how to invest in the stock market, because that's the only way to create wealth. The best is really to buy your own home, but most of them do not have the down payment, and it's very hard to buy a home. But buying stocks, $20, $30, $100, that could be done.
So she's a social entrepreneur teaching and empowering Blacks how to be successful in technology and finance.
Exactly. Multi-generational. That's Leslie Lewis. Christina Lewis, for the past 10 years, has started a not-for-profit to teach Black and brown high school boys All-Star Code. That's 10 years. They've got probably 2,000 have gone through that. And those who have graduated from college are now instant middle class, working with Google, all the computer companies, Meta, Facebook, Twitter, and all that. And what's important is that they're not flipping burgers and earning $15 a day. They are earning seven figures, 100,000, 75,000, right after college because they are good in technology.
Let me ask you, why do you think your daughters were so easy with accepting the definition of African American as their identity with no questioning, with no rebelling? Was it a sign of their generation that is different from now?
I think it's their father. Their father was very proud being a black man, but he didn't want to just be said, you're a black businessman. He is a businessman. And he always said that. Mayor Dinkins, the first black mayor, he is not just a black mayor, he is a mayor. So they hear that from their father, who had pride in being an African American, in being black. And so they are.
Okay. Now, looking back, you moved from the Philippines 54 years ago. How would you describe how far or how different you've grown apart in a way from the roots of your culture?
You know, you can take me out of the country, but you cannot take the country out of me. That's an ad, and it applies to me. At the very core, I am Filipina. And what does that mean? I am proud of growing up in the Philippines, of having the values of a Filipino, which is we're all hard work. Most of us, if not many of us, are hardworking. We are compassionate, empathetic. We have the same dreams as an American. And so when my book came out, when we were deciding the title of the book, and I subtitled it, An Asian American Story of Love, Marriage, Motherhood, and Running a $1 Billion Empire, my own publisher and co-author, Blair Walker, said, why are you saying Asian American? You are limiting your audience. I said, nope. I want everybody to know that I, as an Asian American, have the same hopes and dreams, have the same failures and successes, have the same disappointments and pain as anybody. We are American.
You mentioned motherhood, and so I want to pick up this point about your raising your daughters, and you did say that you and Mr. Lewis decided to raise your two daughters as African American, and yet you also said that you're Asian American mother. What uniquely Asian style values do you think you have passed on to your daughters? How important is it for them to know that their roots are Asian as well?
It is very important in the sense that they are multiracial. And to the extent that they lived in Paris, they know that they are also international. But there is no getting around it. They will be recognized in American society as blacks. The only regret I have is that I did not give them more history of the Philippines. In fact, my daughter just braided me with the question, Mom, why didn't you tell us about Jose Rizal? Jose Rizal is our national hero. And now she's right. I was very intent for them to have an identity as black women that I did less emphasizing the Philippine history and things like that.
Both your daughters, Leslie and Christina, asked you that question recently?
No, it was Christina who asked me.
Why is that?
Because her husband is a reader. He is a writer. He's so well read. And I guess he talked to her about Jose Rizal, the national hero. And she knows nothing about it. And that's the Philippine national hero. That's why she asked me, why have you not taught me, about Jose Rizal? That is true. I didn't tell them. I just concentrated on their being black. Their identity is their father's identity.
In the face of anti-Asian hate because of COVID, but Asian Americans are also on the rise in terms of visibility in entertainment, media, government, all of that. Do you see a change in perhaps at this stage in their lives, your daughters, Leslie and Christina, and in being parents, do you see a shift in terms of their curiosity in looking at the roots of their culture, both in Asian as well as in Black?
Well, that's part of the reason why I wanted to write my book. so that they will understand me completely. And my book, Why Should Guys Have All the Fun, have things that they have never known. So in that sense, I want them to understand that their mother is Filipino-American. So the rise of Asian hate, yes, they do know about the racism inflicted on Asians, especially, Asian women who are elderly. So that's why I'm learning karate.
Good for you. So they have read the book. What did they say?
My daughter said, thumbs up. Leslie, my eldest daughter, has not read it. I think for her, it's still very painful. Her father's dying.
At this stage in your life, you're 80 years old. How do you see your Asianness or your Filipino-ness, if there's such a word, coming out? How do you see your cultural roots coming out in new and different ways?
I am Filipina, as I said, in my heart. The things that I've always valued are the things that I've tried to impart on my grandchildren. But in terms of what I'm doing now for the Philippines, I am gearing up for lobbying efforts so that the United States Congress will finally pass a law that will benefit the Filipino children who will be Americans. Father are military men, women are Filipino women mothers. When the American servicemen do not recognize them, they grow up in the Philippines poor and discriminated against, especially against African American children. So that is my newest advocacy in the Philippines.
Your hometown is Sorsogon in the Philippines. Have you gone back? And when was the last time you went back, and what came to mind as you reflect and trace your roots?
Well, in the year 2000, I established the Lewis College in Sorsogon because during that time, out of 84 provinces, we were in the bottom third. And I know that education is the only key out of poverty. So we established the Lewis College. And since that time, I would go home 4 times a year. Although I am the president and chair of the board, it was my sister-in-law, Edith Nicolas, who was running it. And 7 years later, we took over. So my brother, he was a pastor, Francis Nicolas, took over. But around 5 years ago, his son, Nico Nicolas, started to run the business, and he's been running it very well.
Wow.
So in terms of what do I do with reference to Sorsogon, that's in a way, my legacy.
Yes, and your philanthropy, which is very much revolving around education, social justice.
Yes. Reginald F. Lewis Foundation was founded by my husband 35 years ago. And you have said it, those are the goals of the foundation. And since then, we have donated $35 million to the causes that you have said. But for the past 2 years, we have been reevaluating what should be our goal or our strategy for the next even 5 or 10 years. And we haven't come up with the answer yet.
Loida, what surprised you when you think back on your immigration history coming from the Philippines to America? Choices you've made, hard and smart choices. Any regrets?
Any regrets? Well, the only real regret is that, why did my husband die so young? He was only 50. Could I have helped it? No. I mean, that's God's will. Wait, you did say what regret we had. After I become so successful, pride goes before the fall. Because I thought I was just a hotshot CEO, I started to try to buy companies. And I failed miserably.
You did?
Because I was not buying companies. I violated the rule number 1 of Mr. Lewis. Don't start a company, buy one. And I went to China and bought a startup. And that's a failure. That ended in failure. I went to Bicol region and I start a pig processing plant. And again, abject failure. And I tried other things and I wasn't able to close the deal. And so what regret did I have? That I did not have the skill of Mr. Lewis. Buying a company is an art. It's the art of the deal. And I didn't have it. So regret, that's my regret.
Well, you didn't end up so badly. You did go through the failures and you lived to tell and to share lessons. But through his untimely death and the way you rebounded, you took over the business, there isn't a regret there in terms of how you've rebounded.
Yes. I finished this work. By the time he died, there was still 350 million leveraged buyout debt. And by running the company, I was able to increase income, reduce expenses, and was able to pay down debt, zero debt. And then I started to sell each piece of the company that's left, and I got 1 billion back.
What is your secret?
Secret, I think, is just common sense. You have to look down. Are we making money? Are we not making money? Who is responsible? And making the tough decision. Because when I came in, we were really on the way to bankruptcy. We didn't even have enough cash to pay our corporate staff. And I always say, it's very simple. Our expenses were up. Our income was down. So what do? Reduce expenses, increase income. And that's what I did.
I want to close the interview today by asking you, what beliefs or values do you most want to share and pass on to your children and grandchildren that you have received from your parents and grandparents?
Well, for my grandchildren, don't be afraid of failure. Failure, as I said, is if you learn from it, is another word for success. That's one. And secondly, I want them to have faith in God. And I want to close with the paragraphs that I love. Proverbs 3, verse 5 and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Do not depend on your own understanding. Seek His will in all you do, and He will show you which path to take.
Amen. Thank you, Loida.
Amen. Amen.
When I came to the U.S., it felt like I kind of closed the door on my childhood the moment I entered the U.S. And it's something that I'm only reconciling with now as an adult.
That's Angela Lee, a Chinese-American civic engagement worker in New York's Chinatown. She started interviewing her parents for an oral history project that will trace their immigration journey from Fujian, China. What triggered this roots-finding expedition for Angela, who's just 24 years old? Tune into that episode on October 10th, the second Tuesday of October. 1 in a Billion Find Your Roots special series is made possible in part by a generous grant from the Phi Lambda Charitable Trust. We also rely on listeners like you to sustain our production. Please consider supporting our work with a donation. To donate, just go to our website at www.oneinaBillionVoices.org. Click Donate. Your donation is tax-deductible. 1 in a Billion is produced by our sound engineer and designer Brian Latwinowicz, and our lovely theme song is composed by Brad McCarthy.